There's a test used every single night on the side of American and British roads. It's not a written test. There's no paper, no pen. It happens on the curb, under streetlights, with cars whizzing past just feet away. And the staggering reality is this. Almost everyone who takes it believes they passed. They're convinced they aced it. They walk away thinking they were smooth, coordinated, and clearly in control. But the data tells a completely different story. A terrifying percentage of those people fail, not because they were guilty of anything, but because they didn't understand the hidden rules of the game they were playing. In the next few minutes, you're going to discover the psychological and neurological trap hidden inside an official police procedure, a trap that catches completely innocent people. And by the end, you'll be asking yourself one very uncomfortable question. Will you be one of the few who passes, or will your own brain betray you? We need to start with a scenario. It's late, nearly midnight. You're driving home, the road is quiet, and in your rearview mirror, a set of headlights appears. Then, the lights. The distinct red and blue flash that makes your stomach drop for a reason you can't quite explain, even if you're completely sober. Your heart rate spikes. Your palms get clammy. An officer approaches, and after a few brief words, they ask a question that freezes the blood. "Sir, would you mind stepping out of the vehicle to perform a few tests for me?" In that moment, you are no longer just a driver. You are a subject in a standardized field sobriety test, a psychophysical examination designed with a singular, brutal goal: to overload your brain. But here's where it gets strange. The test you're about to take isn't actually looking for what you think it's looking for. An astonishing loophole in public knowledge, something almost nobody talks about, is that these tests are not designed to prove you are fit to drive. They are scientifically validated to prove you are not. And that is a very dark distinction. Now, before we go any further, I want you to look away from the screen for just a second and take a mental snapshot of your current confidence level. Do you think you'd pass? If you're nodding right now, comment "I'd pass" below, because the psychology of that initial overconfidence is exactly what we're dissecting today. The mini hook here is a cruel twist. Sober people fail exactly because of that confidence. Today, we're peeling back the curtain on the 3 standardized tests that have survived decades of Supreme Court scrutiny. We're going to put you directly into the driver's seat, or rather, the white line, to see if you can survive the hidden edge case failures that nobody warns you about. There's a specific reason the officer is staring at your eyes in a way that seems totally unrelated to driving, and we'll close a massive open loop later on regarding the one physical condition that perfectly mimics intoxication, a condition millions of adults have, yet it triggers a near-instant fail on a test they don't even know they're taking. Let's step out of the car. The door closes, the night air hits you, and the officer begins the horizontal gaze nystagmus test. It sounds hyper-technical, but you know it simply as follow the pen with your eyes. The officer holds a stimulus, often just a pen or a small flashlight, roughly 12 to 15 inches from your nose, slightly elevated. The instruction is simple. Follow the object smoothly with your eyes only. Don't move your head. You think, easy, I can track a moving object. But your brain is about to face a neurological rebellion. Nystagmus is an involuntary jerking of the eye. It happens to all of us if we turn our eyes far enough to the side, like watching train cars pass. However, alcohol and certain other central nervous system depressants cause this jerking to occur at a much sharper, earlier angle, an angle you can't control. Here is the first massive retention spike. Your voluntary control shuts off at the edges of your vision. The officer isn't just checking if you can follow the pen. They are looking for 3 very specific clues per eye. The lack of smooth pursuit, where your eye lags behind the object like a stuttering camera frame. Distinct and sustained nystagmus at maximum deviation, meaning your eye is vibrating violently when looking as far to the side as possible. And the angle of onset, where the jerking starts before your eye reaches a 45-degree angle. If the officer spots 4 or more of these 6 possible clues, you are officially categorized as impaired. But, and this is the horrifying part that keeps legal experts up at night, there are at least 38 different non-alcohol-related causes of this exact eye response. Brain tumors, inner ear diseases, simple vertigo, even the natural physiological nystagmus that about 4% of the population is just born with. You might be failing the test biologically without having touched a drop of alcohol. The officer might be noting down clue number 1, while you're suffering from a silent migraine you forgot to mention. But the eye test is just the gatekeeper. We're moving to the main event, the test that is a shattering destroyer of confidence, the walk and turn. This is where the psychological manipulation intensifies. The officer places you in an instructional paradox. They ask you to stand on a real or imagined line with your right foot directly in front of your left, heel touching toe, arms down by your sides. Then they say the words that doom most people. Do not start the test until I tell you to. What happens next is the trap. The officer then stops talking and begins demonstrating. They take 9 heel-to-toe steps out, turn in a very specific, awkward military-style pivot, and take 9 steps back. While they are demonstrating, your brain is frantically trying to memorize the instructions, fight the adrenaline coursing through your veins, and balance in a position that humans are simply not designed to hold statically. But the test has already begun. The officer is clocking 8 distinct validated clues. Did you keep your balance while they were giving you instructions? Did you start too soon? Because the anxiety makes you want to just get it over with. A staggering number of people step off before the turn is fully explained. That's an instant fail point. You start walking. Heel, toe, heel, toe. You're counting out loud. But here's where it gets strange. The human gait changes under cognitive load. When you are thinking hard about not messing up, your brain's motor cortex stops automating the walking process. You switch from implicit memory, the kind you use to just walk through a grocery store, to explicit memory, the awkward, overthinking kind. This shift makes you stiff. Your arms flail. You look unnatural. The officer is watching for a gap of more than half an inch between your heel and toe. In street shoes, on a slight incline, under a gaze that feels like a laser, your proprioception, your sense of body position, degrades. Your foot lands wrong. That's another clue. You reach the turn. The instructions were to take a series of small steps with one foot to pivot. Most people, because it's biomechanically intuitive, spin on their heel or push off the line. That's a fail. You walk back. You might have taken 10 steps instead of 9 because your working memory failed you. The brain can only hold about 4 chunks of novel information during a high arousal state, and you've just exceeded that capacity. Almost everyone fails this part, not because they're drunk, but because they are human. And that's where the trapdoor opens. This brings us to the one-leg stand. This time, you're asked to stand with your feet together, arms down, and raise one foot roughly 6 inches off the ground, toe pointed forward. You must count out loud, 1001, 1002, all the way to 30 while staring at your elevated foot. If you put your foot down, hop to keep balance, sway significantly, or raise your arms more than 6 inches from your side, you're flagged. 30 seconds feels like an eternity when you're terrified. This is a divided attention test. It feels like a balance test, but it's actually a time-pressure cognitive processor stressor. This changes everything when you realize that the internal ear fluid responsible for your balance is influenced by your heart rate. Your nervousness increases your pulse, which subtly changes the pressure in your inner ear, which causes microscopic swaying. The officer, standing 3 feet away and trained to watch for safety issues, interprets biological anxiety as chemical impairment. Let that sink in for a moment. The legal system often relies on the premise that these tests distinguish anxiety from drunkenness. They don't. They mask one as the other. But the reality is completely different when you introduce a condition almost nobody discusses, the silent, undiagnosed epidemic that closes our major open loop. Remember I mentioned the one physical condition that perfectly mimics intoxication? It's an inner ear disorder, a central nervous system disruption, severe ADHD, or a past head injury. Let's focus on the most insidious one, vestibular disorders, or simply a history of concussions. If you played high school football, if you fell off a skateboard, if you hit your head on a kitchen cabinet so hard you saw stars for a split second 20 years ago, your vestibulo-ocular reflex might be permanently, subtly damaged. This is the reflex that stabilizes your vision on an object while your head is moving. When you're doing the walk and turn, your head bobs slightly. A healthy VOR cancels that movement so the world looks stable. A damaged VOR makes the line seem to swim. You will stagger not because you are drunk, but because your brain is receiving a corrupted reality. The officer doesn't have a medical degree in their back pocket alongside the taser. They see a clue, They tally a point. You've just failed a police test because of a concussion in 2008. It's a terrifying blind spot in the roadside algorithm. We have to pause here and look at the data because the numbers are terrifying. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, the very body that commissioned the studies validating these tests, has published reports that get buried. A meta-analysis across the US and similar UK roadside impairment standards shows that while the tests are highly accurate in detecting a blood alcohol concentration of 0.10% or higher, their accuracy drops significantly at the legal limit and plummets when applied to people who are fatigued, elderly, obese, or medicated with legally prescribed antidepressants. We aren't talking about people breaking the law. We're talking about a driver with a Zoloft prescription and a sprained ankle. Yet the subjective perception of the officer on the scene, the magical, "I detected the odor of an alcoholic beverage" phrase that appears in every report, often overrides the objective reality. You are no longer in a court of law. You are in a theater of cognitive bias. Once an officer decides you failed the tests, they stop looking for reasons you might be sober. And then something unexpected happened in the development of these roadside tests. A psychological quirk that the original designers didn't foresee became the most damning piece of evidence in court: the video footage. You've seen the dash cam or body cam videos. They go viral constantly. You watch someone struggling to stand on one leg, wobbling, dropping their foot, and you laugh or judge. But the camera lies. The camera flattens the dynamic range of stress. It captures the wobble, but not the 18-wheeler that blew its horn 50 yards away, startling the subject. It captures the confused look on a face, but not the officer shining a blinding flashlight directly into dilated pupils. You are watching a high-definition, context-free highlight reel of a person having the worst night of their life while being forced to perform a neurological exam on a sloped piece of asphalt. Here's the vital engagement point for you. Think about the last time you saw one of those viral DUI fail videos. Did you immediately assume the person was a drunk, dangerous mess? Or did you ever question the validity of the game they were forced to play? Comment below if this is making you rethink those videos you've watched. I want to see how the perception shifts in real time. Let's dig deeper into the linguistic trap, a clever semantic game often played by the officer to gain compliance. You'll notice the phrasing, "Would you mind stepping out of the vehicle?" Or, "Do you mind taking a few tests?" Or, "You're free to refuse, but..." This is a conversational sniper shot. In both American and British culture, we are conditioned to comply with authority to prove our innocence. The idea of refusing a test feels like an admission of guilt. But legally, the standardized field sobriety test is a voluntary search. In almost every US state, there is no legal penalty for politely declining the physical SFSTs before an arrest. The breathalyzer or blood test at the station is a different legal monster with implied consent laws that carry license suspensions for refusal. But the roadside gymnastics? That's data gathering for the officer. Yet 98% of drivers comply. Why? Because the officer speaks with a tone of assumed inevitability. They open the car door. They say, "Step out," instead of asking a question. It's a profound lesson in how authority uses conversational momentum to bypass your logical brain. This isn't just a police test, it's a psychological dominance test. And if you don't know the rules, you've already lost before your feet touch the pavement. We're moving now into the emotional escalation point of the map. This is the shock, the consequence that follows a failure. Let's say you fail. Your hands are cuffed behind your back, the cold metal ratcheting tight. You're placed in the back of a squad car, the plastic seat unmovable, your dignity stripped. At the station, you finally take a stationary breath test, and it's 0.00, 0.0. But you're not immediately released into the night with an apology and a voucher for a free taxi. The police report will justify the arrest based on probable cause, citing your performance on the walk and turn and the one-leg stand. The report will state that you exhibited clues of impairment and that a drug recognition expert evaluation is required. You might be asked to provide a blood draw to test for substances that didn't cause your wobble. Perhaps cannabis you used days ago in a legal state, or a prescription sleeping pill that lingers in plasma but has long ceased any active cognitive effect. You end up with a DUID charge, not a DUI. Driving under the influence of drugs. Your life still goes into the catastrophic blender of legal fees, license suspension, and social stigma, all because you couldn't balance on one leg at 2 a.m. while terrified. This isn't a hypothetical. This is a documented pattern in suppression hearings across the country. This is the reality of failing the test. So, we must ask the question that penetrates the core of the law. How can something so scientifically flawed be the gold standard? This is the midpoint twist that elevates the story from a simple instructional video to an investigative expose. The SFSTs aren't really medical tests. They are evidence factories. The U.S. Supreme Court and lower courts have admitted them not because they are perfect, but because they are standardized. The law loves procedure more than it loves truth. If the officer reads the instructions exactly from their pocket card, if they demonstrate the turn correctly, the courts deem the resulting failure admissible, regardless of the underlying physiological noise. The standardization is the magic wand that turns a wobble into a conviction. So when you're watching the officer demonstrate by standing on one leg, they're not just showing you what to do. They are building a legal fortress around the evidence they are about to extract from your neurological system. Every word they speak is a brick in that wall. But here's where the system fractures, and we reward the retention viewers who've stuck with us this deep. There is a counterintuitive survival tactic that sits in a gray area of high-stakes interaction. It's not about breaking the law, it's about protecting constitutional physical agency. Since the SFST is a designed failure point for a stressed nervous system, your only genuine tool is to recognize the impossibility of a fair pass under a high arousal state. If you have any physical injury, a bad knee from a college basketball game, an eye twitch, a severe anxiety disorder diagnosed or not, you are permitted to state it clearly and firmly. Loudly narrate it for the body camera. Officer, I have a documented knee injury. I will not be able to walk heel to toe. I also have severe anxiety right now. I do not consent to physical tests. This changes your refusal from a suspicious silence to a rational, medical-based declination. It supplies your defense attorney with the audio clip that defeats probable cause. The supreme irony of the "almost everyone fails" title is that the only way to win the game is very often to recognize you shouldn't be playing it in the first place. Now, let's twist the lens and look at the UK perspective, because the target audience here spans the Atlantic. In the UK, the roadside procedure differs sharply. You won't generally see the walk and turn on a British verge. The UK uses the Field Impairment Test, or FIT, a battery that includes a pupil examination, a Romberg balance test, and the modified finger-to-nose test. The UK officers are trained to recognize drugs driving under Section 5A of the Road Traffic Act. Yet the psychological trap is identical. The finger-to-nose test is devastatingly hard for a sober, nervous person. You tip your head back, close your eyes, and try to touch the tip of your nose with your index finger. Without visual input, your proprioception drifts. You'll miss your nose and poke your cheek. The officer scribbles a note. Why did you miss? Because when you close your eyes, your body sways microscopically in a pattern called the postural sway envelope. Anxiety magnifies this envelope. It's a universal human physiological response, yet it's cited as evidence of drug use. Whether it's the US-based horizontal gaze nystagmus or the UK-based finger-to-nose, the engine is the same. Exploiting the gap between normal human neurophysiology and the myth of perfect, robot-like human performance. This brings us to a pattern interrupt. Almost nobody talks about this part. The safety question. Before the tests, the officer often asks, "Do you have any physical or medical conditions I should know about?" This seems caring. It is a legal tripwire. The moment you say, "No, I'm fine," even if you have a fused ankle or a panic disorder, you have medically cleared yourself on camera. If you later sway because of that bad ankle, it can't be used to explain the swaying to the judge. The officer will say, "He confirmed he was fine at the scene." So the most critical retention check is this. If you say nothing, you're medically cleared for a test you're guaranteed to fail. If your dog just died. If you worked a 14-hour shift. If you're terrified of cops due to past trauma. You must vocalize your humanity. The algorithm of the test makes no allowances for the human condition, but a record of your statement introduces reasonable doubt into the algorithm. We are deep in the later stage of the emotional flow map, the part where realization hits harder than the shock. Realizing that these tests are designed not in bad faith, but in a clinical vacuum that ignores the reality of fear. The designers were scientists in labs, measuring intoxicated people in controlled settings. They compared them to sober subjects who were also in comfortable, controlled settings. They did not design these for the variable of a full sympathetic nervous system fight or flight activation under spinning police lights. A surge of adrenaline dumps glucose into your bloodstream for rapid energy, but it also fine-tunes your muscles for gross motor action, like running, not fine motor control, like standing on one leg. So, a sober person in a state of terror has the same fine motor signature as a drunk person in a state of relaxation. That's the collision of biology and policy. It's a catastrophic design flaw when played out on the hard shoulder of the M25 or I-95. The open-loop system demands we now close the massive gap we opened regarding the one condition that perfectly mimics intoxication. It's not just inner ear issues or concussions, though those are prime. The most shocking condition that catches sober people is a phenomenon called highway hypnosis residue, combined with the seesaw effect. The seesaw effect happens when you've been driving for hours. Your eyes have been making constant micro-adjustments to the vanishing point of the road. When you stop and get out of the car, your visual vestibular system is still calibrated for 70 miles per hour. The ground literally looks like it is moving backward. The solid white line ripples like water. A completely sober person getting out of a long drive is neurologically drunk on motion adaptation. They will fail the walk and turn not because of a substance, but because their brain is still driving the car while their body is standing still. This resolves the mystery of how a teetotaler can look hammered. They aren't impaired by ethanol. They are impaired by physics. So, where do we land as we build toward the reflective conclusion? We've journeyed through the neuroscience of the eyes, the biomechanics of the turn, the legal pseudo-safety of standardization, and the psychological weight of compliance. The comment section is probably splitting into two factions right now. One faction is thinking, this is terrifying, the tests are a compliance trap. The other is thinking, drunk drivers are dangerous and these tests keep us safe. And here's where the mature, documentary truth lies. The tests do catch drunk drivers. They catch the dangerously intoxicated very effectively. But they also cased a massive net of false positives, and a civilized society shouldn't sacrifice 100 innocent neurological anomalies to catch one guilty driver. The system relies on your ignorance of proprioception and vestibular variance. Knowledge is the only blind spot detection system you have. Before we leave this narrative today, we need to hit the final soft call to action. This channel exists to decode these hidden rules, the real-world systems that seem simple on the surface, but are designed with a complexity that can trap any of us. If you value this kind of deep dive, hit the like button so the algorithm sees that thoughtful, legal, and psychological education matters. I don't shout it out for fake internet points. I say it because literally 95% of you watching aren't subscribed and you'll never get the next expose. Break that pattern now. Hit subscribe and, crucially, the notification bell. The next video is a direct follow-up on what to say during a traffic stop to politely and legally navigate a search request without creating conflict. Now for the shorts lines. I've seeded the script with self-contained truths that can live independently on Shorts or TikTok. Listen to these, rip them out if you're listening in the car, and drop the one that hit you hardest in the comments. Sober people fail these tests more than you think. The line on the ground ripples if your brain is stuck on the highway. It's not a balance test. It's a divided attention trap. Anxiety looks exactly like intoxication to an officer. You are a single, missed step away from probable cause. Your inner ear can betray you under flashing lights. The camera captures the wobble, not the terror. Counting out loud disconnects your motor cortex. The only way to win is to know the game exists. A concussion from 2008 can fail a roadside test today. As we end, let's bring the lens back to you. Imagine you're back in that driver's seat, the lights flashing in the mirror. Before this video, you would have stepped out with the innocent arrogance of someone about to fall into a psychology trap. You wouldn't have known that the test started the moment the door opened. You wouldn't have known that your fear is chemically indistinguishable from impairment to a field test. You wouldn't have known that the turn is mechanically unnatural. But now you've seen the blueprint. You understand the hidden standard. Does that knowledge change how you feel about standing on that white line? I think it should. It should ground you in a deep, cautious respect for the complexity of the human nervous system and the legal machinery that judges it. The question we started with was, will you pass? The real question is far more profound. Now that you know what you know, would you even agree to play the game? The decision exists in that split second between the officer's request and your response. Stay smart, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next one.